Hello beadlings, welcome back. So today's tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make this style of bumper for rotating cuffs. See how it's all flat. If you want to skip straight to that tutorial, here is the timestamp. Otherwise, I have a couple of announcements first. So the first announcement is that my Etsy and commissions and everything are going to be on hiatus from March 30th until April 8th. And when I come back, there is going to be a price increase on all of my stuff. That is partly because Etsy is raising all of the fees for all of everybody. It sucks and I hate it. Part of that is inflation and just trying to keep up with costs. Like as my little candy operation has grown, my costs have also grown. We hate capitalism, but it is what it is. So that is just to let you know what's going on with that. The second announcement is that you've probably seen it already, but I do have a tutorial video up on how to make these stem necklaces. I've been obsessed with making them. They have really made my life a lot easier at shows, and I'm definitely planning on bringing some of these to festivals. I get really overstimulated at shows a lot of the time, and I like struggle with some sensory issues, and so having one of these on me just like at any given time helps me to self-regulate and have fun in environments that I normally struggle with. I do also have an Instagram post up. It's a little bit older now, it's a couple weeks old, but I do have an Instagram post up where I go through a bunch of different like sensory things. So like, you know, if bright lights bother you, if sound bothers you, if smells bother you, like different solutions. These are both solutions that I've personally come up with and also that other people in the rave community have come up with. And I just made a post kind of compiling all of them because I know that there are other people with sensory issues who want to be able to go to raves and concerts. And so I think some of those tips might be helpful if you are one of those people. So definitely check that one out. My third announcement is I just wanted to let you know like what festivals I'm going to be at this year. So in May, I'm going to be going to Infrasound, which is in Minnesota. In June, I will be at Electric Forest. In July, I will be at Base Ribbon Pines, which is also a small festival in Minnesota. And in September, I will be at North Coast. Those are the only festivals I'm currently planning to do this year. We'll see. I might end up doing one other one, but probably not. If you do end up at any of those festivals, definitely come find me. I usually will have Kandi on me, and I'm always super, super happy to say hello and trade and take a picture and like all that stuff, because raving for me is all about community. So I'm always super happy to meet anybody who wants to come say hi to me at any show or festival ever. So the fourth and final thing that I wanted to talk about really briefly was the Patreon. So you all know I have a Patreon. All the money from that Patreon goes back into supporting the candy stuff that I do, either buying stuff for making and editing videos or buying supplies to make candy. Basically just helping to support the channel and make it so that I can continue to do, you know, the things that I do and make them free on YouTube. What you get if you join the Patreon is you get to vote on the next upcoming tutorials. You get to see kind of like behind the scenes stuff. I post pretty regularly. Every couple weeks, I'll post like an update of what's going on, what my plans are, what I'm doing. You can give like input on what you would like the next tutorials to be. And you get an early access to the tutorials when I post them. I always post them in the Patreon first, and then I make them public on YouTube like a day or two later. And you also get to see your name in the credits at the end of every video. Okay, that's it for announcements, and on with the tutorial. Okay, so I am starting off with a base that already has one bumper done. This is just to show you right away what it's gonna look like when we finish the other side. And this is a 6X base that I'm doing it on. If you want to know just how to make rotator cuffs, the basics of that, I do have a video on rotator cuffs. This is specifically just this style of bumper with the multi-stitch. And because I'm going to be making a matching bumper, I'm also going to show you how to put the little flowers on it. So of course, in terms of supplies, you're going to need string. I use 1.2 millimeter cloth covered stretch cord, scissors, plastic candy needle. I super highly recommend using one of these for this. I do not recommend doing it without a needle, purely because it is going to be so annoying to try and do it with no needle. And beads. I'm going to be using more colors of beads, but this is my starting out. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my base. Oh yeah, and you obviously need a base to build these bumpers on. Like I said before, this is a 6X base, but you can do it with something even probably as small as like a 3X base, honestly, should work. In any case, you're going to start out with your base, and the first thing you're going to do is cut off your string and attach it to the base. I don't have like a specific length of string that works. This is like probably about 8 feet of string. You just need a lot. It takes a lot of string to do this. So now we're going to tie the string on. I just use a triple knot, and I'm tying it right next to a contact bead, which is this one right here, so that it'll be very easy to hide the knot inside of that bead. Cut off the short end, and then take the long end and tie the needle on. I just use a double knot so that it stays secure and does not fall off. There we go. And then run the string through that contact bead. This will hide the knot and also make sure that your string is coming out in the right place. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 rows of spikes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So coming out of this contact bead, we're going to add 5 beads onto the needle. And then moving over to the right, since the string is coming out, going to the right, we're going to go into the next contact bead over. And pull that tight. So when you pull that tight, you'll see you get that little spike shape. And we just repeat this all the way around, adding 5 beads and going into the next contact bead until we've got a row of spikes all the way around the top. Okay, so we're doing the last spike of that top row, but you can see 5 beads between each contact bead, and we've got almost like a halo of spikes all the way around the top. There we go. Okay. So you've got your string coming out of this yellow bead right here. We're going to run it down diagonally through the base, 1, 2, 3, 4, and come out of this red bead here. The reason for that is you can see this top orange bead is directly above this bottom red bead, and we're going to make a second row of spikes. So taking your needle, we'll go just like that, and out through the red, and we'll pull the string through. And then we're going to repeat that same thing, add 5 beads. And go into the next bead over, like directly horizontally across. Just like that. And so what we're doing is we're making 2 rows of identical spikes, and we're going to repeat that all the way around the circle until we come right back to here. Okay, so you can see we've got a double row of spikes, one on top of the other. I'm about to add this last spike here. Coming out of this bead, we're going to go directly into the next bead over, and then we're also going to come out the tip of this spike. So we go through this red bead, and then up through the spike and come out the tip. There we go. Pull that tight. So now we've got our like base layer in place of 3D spikes, and we're going to turn this into flowers. Because I've got the bottom done already, I'm basically just gonna mimic what I already have down there. And so for that, I need more colors in order to do the flowers. So the first thing to notice is I have sort of a random pattern of the greens going back and forth up here. There is no thought to the pattern of like what green goes where. I kind of just randomly place the alternating greens because I want it to mimic the look of like actual bushes or shrubbery. And there's not like a set specific pattern for that. So in between each point here, we're going to add 4 beads. And the pattern of that currently is determined by what is down below. But the important thing to remember is 4 beads in between each point. And for flowers, it's going to be 3 beads. That is the color of the flower petals. So for this one, it's blue since we are mirroring what is below. And when you do a flower pattern like this, or when I do a flower pattern like this, I do flower, skip, flower, skip. So there's a flower in between these 2 points. So then there's only going to be green in between these 2 points. We're going to skip one. And you can see alternating the greens in a way that I think looks pretty. And then we've got a flower. So we do a green and then 3 colored for the petals. Then we're just going to repeat that literally 4 beads in between each point because we're doing flowers. It's flower, no flower, flower, no flower. For flowers, it's 1 green and 3 colored for the petals. I think that's the basics. We're going to repeat this all the way around until we come back to this point. Oh yeah, 2 things real quick. 1, it doesn't matter which side you put the green bead on as long as you remain consistent for the rest of the cuff. So if you start with the green bead on the left side, you have to put the green bead on the left side for all the other flowers on the cuff. Otherwise, it won't line up correctly. And secondly, I was not tightening properly before. You do want to pull it fully tight so that it is pretty stiff because we want these bumpers to be solid bumpers. We want them to like stop the rotator from falling off. So you do want to make sure that you tighten it as you go. Okay, we're back. We have everything on there. I'm about to add this last one, but you can see we've got our flowers and then we've got our random greens. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through the point, and then we're also going to go through these next 2. The reason for that is that the next layer I'm adding, I'm going to have to add the center of the flower, which is going to be yellow. And for that, we need to be coming out of the bead right next to the center of the flower. So we go through 1, 2, and come on, 1, 2, 3. So we're coming out of this bead here. And we're going to pull it tight. And then we're going to add yellow. So now we are officially doing multi-stitch. We have moved over into just pure multi-stitch, which also I believe some people may know that as like a flat cuff or a character cuff. I have a multi-stitch tutorial here if you want to check that one out. But we're gonna, string is coming out of this bead. We've added a yellow bead, and now we go into the next bead over. Boop, and we pull it tight, and that yellow bead sits right on top of the blue bead, forcing it into a petal shape. And now, because we're coming out of this blue bead, we're gonna add a green bead on top of this one right here, and go into the next green bead over. The way that I do my weird little random patterns is I just kind of look at what's touching. So this more different green is going to be touching another more different green, just like that. See? And now we've got two like glow greens, so I'll do a glow green here. It is fully random. It's just whatever feels like the vibe. Just like that. See? And then on top here, we'll do another glow green just because I feel like it. There we go. And pull that tight. And that's literally it. We just repeat that. So once again, we're at the flower, and we're going to be adding the yellow center. This is also why I cut such a long piece of string, is because multi-stitch does take up a ton of string. And you can see how it would be very annoying to do this with no Kandi needle. So that's that. We just repeat that literally all the way around the cuff, add all the centers, and when we get back to here, we will add the next layer of petals, and so on and so forth. I will go through and just show you each layer real quick. Okay, so we are back around to the front, to this very first one that we put on, and just like any normal multi-stitch, we're gonna step it up by going up through the blue bead and then through that first yellow bead that we originally added on this row, pulling it tight. And now we're going to add the next row. So this is going to be the row where we do the petals. Blue bead goes here. And just more green beads, like wherever your little heart desires. Whatever vibes. There's no rule for this. I just try to alternate and kind of, you know, have random patterns thrown in there, as you can kind of see. Okay. And once you get past that first row, it does get a little easier also because the beads are automatically sticking up. Just like that. See? So again, we just repeat this all the way around until we come back to the beginning. Okay, so we've finished that row. We've got our second layer of petals on. This is the last bead in that row. And then we go up through yellow and blue to the next layer, just like that. There we go. Perfect. So now you can see, right, on this layer, this is our like third layer. We did the first layer of adding beads, like the 4 between each point. Second layer is where we put on the yellow beads, and third layer is where we put on the second set of side petals. So this is 3 layers in on the multi-stitch. And now you can see that alternating spikes fit perfectly right there. So this spike fits perfectly right there. And we're going to, instead of adding a bead, we're just going to run the string through that spike and then into the next bead over and pull it tight. And so that is how you get that solid layer on there. Now, important, I said alternating spikes because if you look at this spike, directly to the left. It is currently sitting on top of, like, I'm going to call it like an up row of beads. Like this bead is sticking up, whereas this one fit into a down row where the bead was sticking down. So this is not going to be our last layer. We're going to have one layer after this, but we're going to go add beads, and we're going to skip this spike because it's not ready yet. See? And we'll go like this. And then when you get to the flower, you'll add the top petal. So row number 4 is top petals and half of the spikes. And for this pattern, you can see it's always going to be the spike directly to the right of a flower is ready to be woven into the multi-stitch. And the spikes to the left of the flower are going to be on the next row. So it's literally just that. You add in the alternating spikes by weaving them in instead of adding like a loose bead. You just treat this center bead as if it was a loose bead. And then just skip over the alternating spikes. They will have their turn on the next row. So you get it. It's a little bit more complicated than the last row, but it is ultimately pretty simple. You just have to keep track of which spike is which. And even that is pretty easy because you can just look at it and see like, oh, that fits perfectly right there. Boop. So we just do that all the way around until we come back to the beginning. Okay, so we are adding the last bead in this row, and just like before, we will go up through these 2 beads in order to step it up to the final layer. If this is confusing at all, I definitely recommend you watch the full multi-stitch tutorial. I'm not going super slow on this one just because I do already have a tutorial on multi-stitch and it is the exact same stitch. Like there is no difference between that multi-stitch and this multi-stitch, except we're just incorporating these spike beads into it. So now we are on the final layer. You've got 2 options here. If you want kind of a skinnier type of layer, you can just run the string directly through here, 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 those 4 beads, and just tie this one down, loop it in, and do that all the way around without adding any extra beads. That will give you kind of like, this is pretty much exactly what it'll look like. It's a little bit skinnier. That is not what I did on the bottom. I did add a full top row of beads, which means we're going to be adding a bead here and a bead here. So 2 beads, and then now we're coming out of this one, which is ready to tie in that spike. Just like that. And you will see on the bottom row, I did not add any additional beads on top of the flower. So for the flowers, I just run it straight through like that. And continue. So I'm only adding additional green beads in these sections here. I'm not adding the beads on top of the flower petals. But again, like this is very much open to interpretation, whatever you think looks good for you. Like have fun with it, there is really no specific rule on whether or not you like have to add this extra layer of beads. All you have to do is just get it to a point where you can loop in that second row of spikes. And that's it. You just pull it tight. I clearly cut way too much string. Like, I overcompensated for not wanting to have to tie more string on at the end. I think I cut probably like 7 or 8 feet of string. So, you know, that's annoying, but less annoying than having to tie on extra string, I think, personally. And that's really it. Like, you just repeat that all the way around. And then once you're back at the beginning, you just tie it off. You can either tie a knot, you know, in here somewhere, or you can always run your string back up through the arm of one of these spikes and tie it off at the base, which is what I'm going to do in just a second here. Okay, so now we are back at the beginning. We've got everything on there. We're just tying down this last one, just like that. And then I'm just gonna run my string over to the right. There we go. And I'm gonna run it up this arm here. And through the bead. I'm gonna go over a little bit here, just in the base. And then I'm gonna cut this a little shorter so it's easier to tie off. That's enough string for a whole other cuff. I overestimated. And I do have like a whole video on how I tie off my cuffs. I will put a link to it in the upper right hand corner there, but just a normal triple knot. There we go. And we cut off the little tail. Voila. And that is how I make my multi-stitch bumpers that I use on my animal cuffs. I hope this was helpful. And like I said, if you want to review anything about multi-stitch, anything about X-Base, I do have those tutorials up already on my page. They're in the beginner-friendly playlist. And that's the tutorial. I hope that that helped. I tried to be very thorough. I know that it is a little bit more of an advanced technique, and I put links to the previous videos of just multi-stitch and X-Base tutorials. I definitely recommend, if you're a newer Kandi kid or are not familiar with either of those stitches, that you definitely do go check those out and make sure that you have a good understanding of those before hopping over to this one. But once you've got that down, it is a pretty easy stitch to do, and it just looks super, super good. It makes the cuff look super clean and just like, I don't know how to describe it. I just love it. So that's the tutorial, and let me know down in the comments if you liked it, if it helped, what you want to see next. If you want to vote on the next tutorial, that is going to be over on my Patreon. Patrons get to vote every month on what the tutorial is going to be. And also their love and support sustains Hubert. We've got Tiny Hubert here today, and he wants to also say thank you. And a big, super extra special thank you to everyone who is already a patron over on my Patreon, whose names you will see here scrolling up in just a second. Thank you so much. I love you, and have an amazing day. Blair.